Welcome to the Denver Sports Betting Show UFC edition. This segment is sponsored by Fisher Insurance Group. Guys, reach out to them for all your insurance needs. We talk about getting money here. You see the table of money, but this is about saving money. So call them, get your insurance quote, and see what you can do to save money. As always, I am joined by my fight squad, Taylor, Ryan, and this week, special guest UFC fighter, Chepe Mariscal. Let's see some of your highlights before we get started.
That's a bad dude right there.
Rocking, dude. So, man, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you guys for, having me on.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you remember those?
Yeah, I do.
You remember that vividly?
That's my last fight.
Yeah. So, I guess, take us through a little bit of that. What's it like beating somebody up like that?
Well, it's fun in my end, like I grew up doing it. So, like, I started at the age of 6. Made it a dream at 9, and then 9 years old, I was like chasing all these other champions, what they did, how they trained, and then to feel, to be at the level I am now, it just feels great, like a dream come true.
Who were some of those champions? Who were your role models back then?
So Randy Couture was good, man. I like how he had a lot of strategy going against specific opponents. Like, he didn't build up to the hype, like when you fought the boxer, you took him down right away, got it done, got paid, see you later. So I feel like it was just guys like that. GSP was a huge one where he was a guy who, tore his groin in a match and his coach kept him in, hey man, even like hit him with your groin if you have to, but we're going to go out there to win. So little things like that off of those kind of champions. And BJ Penn was a good one, just those dogs, and then Fedor, who was just another champion in Europe who made a lot of noise. Then John Jones, I grew up with the John Jones era, where, he was another dude who was just doing these crazy moves and finishing fights and, just put a good motivation for me to chase this dream and goal that I have.
Definitely. Crazy. It's still the John Jones era.
It's been the John Jones era for a minute now.
Yeah. And we are a betting show, and I mean, John Jones has got me paid the most. I talk a lot about, the different fighters, their ranking and their levels and stuff like that. But to me, John Jones is like the ultimate.
Oh, 100%.
I was telling Taylor, it was a couple weeks, I think, ago off air. John Jones was my biggest bet ever.
Yeah, for sure.
When he fought Cyril Gahn, that line opened, I think, at minus 125. And I knew just the MMA gods came down and they spoke to me. I'm like, John Jones is going to twist him like a pretzel. 125, you just want to give me money? So I took it. Biggest bet of my life. John Jones got me paid. So respect. I love GSP too. So I love your list of all-time great fighters. So you got started early at the age of, you said 6?
Yeah.
And then
what did you get started with?
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu, judo.
Okay.
Well, it was like a mix of Japanese jiu-jitsu and then the Japanese judo. So it was just a good start off. And then what's crazy, we showed up on a Monday and the coach saw how we were performing and then he said, hey, there's a tournament this weekend. You guys want to jump in? And, I was begging my dad and my parents, hey, let's, get me in this week. And they got me and my siblings in. I have an older sister, younger brother, and we all took first place. So it was
that's awesome.
And it was just the excitement of wow, I get a trophy. I wasn't doing anything before where we were getting trophies, so it was like, damn, first place trophy, bigger than me, so it was just cool. And then it kind of the friendships I was collecting throughout that, it just brought more bondage to the sport. And then at the age of 9, which was crazy, my head coach at the time, he had a promotion to go to, and he was like, hey, you got to come with me. Your parents said that, they're out doing something, come to these fights with me. And I'm like, all right, cool. We get to the door, and they're like, hey, is he 21? He's like, no, he's my son. So they were like, oh, okay, yeah, bring him in, So I got in and got to the back, but then my coach at the time took me to the stance. He's like, hey, you got to sit here. Don't go nowhere. Watch the fights. I'm going to go corner these dudes, and we're out of here. I'll take you to Burger King. I was like, cool, So I was like, it got me more into, the sport. I was like, wow, this is how they do it, And then a knockout happened, and it made, like, I didn't even know what was going on. But when the knockout happened, it made me jump on my feet.
Yeah.
It gave me crazy chills, and the arena was blowing up. I was like, damn, I want to do this for the rest of my life.
That's awesome, man.
That's such a good story. Yeah, that's awesome.
So it was your calling from a very early age. When did it really like take off for you, and you know that light bulb kind of went off that you could be a professional?
So I won the IMMAF World Championships, and it's like the World Championships for amateurs. And it's I was representing USA against like everybody, you know, the world basically. So
wow. Okay.
So it was I was 21, and I won all 4 fights in the first round, submissions. Well, one was a TKO, but one was a submission. But it was more of a strategy. I was like, man, the shorter time I'm in the cage, the more I could get to the championships, because you could get injured or, you know, like blow out your arms and you can't show up for the next day, you know. So it was a week tournament. So after I did that and then I won it, I just had more motivation, and the age I was at, like 21, I was like, man, I got to go pro, and like now, you know, like. And John Jones won it at 21, you know,
Okay.
the belt, and I was like, damn, I got to get in, you know, like,
I got to keep up with John Jones.
yeah, exactly.
I can't let John Jones beat me. So let's backtrack a little bit, because something really stood out to me. Mm-hmm. You said it was a weekend tournament.
Yeah.
How many fights do you have in a weekend?
So it was 4. So we fought
Wow.
on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They gave me a break Thursday,
Oh,
and
that's
then
nice.
they're like Friday. They're like, here you go. Friday's the World Championship.
That's
and it was
crazy.
for the. It was like an expo in Las Vegas, which was cool. It was a good experience, you know, for like all us like amateurs. But that's where even a lot of other people from the other teams were saying like, hey man, like, stop sandbagging, go pro, you know, like go do something with this now, you know. And that's what I did. People could say I try to jump the gun a little bit because my record is crazy. It's 18-6, but those 6 losses are dudes that are in the UFC that are doing great. And there's dudes that I beat that are in the UFC, you're still doing great. So it's like I always stayed in that mix of fighting the top dudes in the, you know, top level competition guys. I was like, okay, what's their record? Oh, they're undefeated. Let's go. You know, like, and then taking those challenges. A lot of those guys were calling me out, and I was like, let's go, dude, you know, next week, you know, like, so I was always about it, like about the game, the competition, you know, and I was living it like the gladiator times, you know, like they didn't get to pick and choose when they fought or who they fought,
No.
you know, like, it could be a lion and they didn't even know. You know, they're like, here's a spear, good luck, you know. And I just feel like the more weapons I have, it's gonna be hard to have a short notice or a fight camp against me because I'm always fighting different, switching stance. You know, like I want to be a well mixed martial artist. You know, like I'm not the number 1 in jiu-jitsu or number 1 in Muay Thai, but I bet you if you put those dudes in an MMA fight with me, it's a whole different story, you know?
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely. And they do that. They do put top-ranked Muay Thai guys in the Octagon, and they get destroyed. So was there one fight kind of in that up-and-coming process that, like, you can win or loss, that you can look back and say, man, that was, like, the one that like really helped me get to this next level?
So my last loss was the one that kind of pulled the trigger of like, man, if I really want to do this in the pro level, like I got to start beating these dudes or, you know, like getting finishes to set the example that I really want to do this. And it was against Sean Seriano. And that fight, he was a well-experienced dude, a guy who was already in the mix of, he was in the UFC, he got cut or something happened where he got out of the UFC, and I had the opportunity to beat him and try to like get that leverage to get, you know, called to the UFC, but I ended up losing, and that's where I kind of sat down with my wife and my head coach, and we're like, I was like, hey man, like I got to change all these bad habits and start thinking like more positive. So I started being just more nice to myself, you know, like being like more positive, like, hey, you can do this, you know, love yourself, you know, like just changing that mindset and giving myself motivation, you know, because it's more of like in the fight game, man, when you're about to like go in the cage or even spar with some of the top elite dudes, you kind of get in your head, you know, you're like talking to yourself, you're like, damn, I never talked to myself like this ever in my life, you know. So it was mastering things like that where I was like, you have to be, you know, your mind's friend, you know, like, and the more you go against it, the more you can lose, you know, and then that's where I started picking up where all my losses were literally me beating myself before I even got in the cage, thinking of outside things and not of the moment. So then I was like, man, I'm gonna go all faith with, you know, with with God and with my team and the beliefs of all the experience I have, and let's see, and let's go, you know. So then I fought on Cage Warriors. I fought in a lot of like different promotions, which was cool, you know, like LFA, Cage Warriors, Combate, and I called out their top dudes that didn't want to fight me. And I'm like, all right, well, what do you have? You know, I felt like I was picking up scraps or whatever, but I beat those dudes, got these TKOs, and then threw my name in for a short notice against Trevor Peak, who was
Trevor Peak's bang.
Yeah, he was 100% finish rate, undefeated, coming out the Contender Series, and I was just like, man, this is the example. This is the guy to beat and show the UFC who I am, because I've been fighting these dudes, but not set myself to, you know, that championship route.
So that dedication, you talk about that faith, like you say you're moving out to Las Vegas now because you want to be more around it, right? Like you're trying to get your career to that next level. So kind of tell us a little bit about that. Yeah,
man. The move is a business thing, you know, like I want to show my face to the UFC and be around and just say, hey, man, I'm here to fight and promote you and, you know, do whatever I can to be a spokesman, whatever, like to push this sport. You know, it's a beautiful sport. It's you know, in violent world, right? You know, because it's
beautiful violence.
Beautiful violence, right? So it's like, it's pushing that, you know, in a good movement where fighters don't even have to talk smack to, you know, really represent themselves, you know, like where they could just fight and people to admire the art of it, you know. So it's doing things like that, and then trying to bring like holiness to the game, you know, like, you know, there is an aftermath of all this, you know, like, and if you follow God's path, I feel like, you know, you'll have a better ending than a lot of other fighters who try to fight against it, you know, who retire kind of wrong, you know, or just don't do the like the right financial, you know, things, you know, like just helping them throughout everything, you know, like life decisions, right? So I feel like going out there and pushing that kind of movement and, you know, treating everybody eye to eye, you know, like I don't want to be known as this dude who got too high where like he can't even say hi to, you know, the front desk guy, you know. It's like that's how I want to treat everybody and move this game you know, in a positive movement, and then train with some top level dudes at the UFC PI, you know, take advantage of all that facility, and then hopefully get short notice fights to the Apex. You know, we're right next door, so it's like, hey man, tag me in, you know.
That's cool.
We were talking about that before. What are some of the benefits that you get from being out there, right? Like you get to be around the brand, the recovery stuff. Like how much of an impact do you think that's going to have on your game?
A lot of impact, just because it's all in one house. You know, like you get the recovery there, you get the training there, you get the science stuff, you know, like the DEXA scan, you know, and then Dana White's there, you know, like just showing them. The matchmakers are always probably chilling around there. You know, they're not far from the Apex. So it's just being, you know, like a student of the game still, and still learn and use these things that, you know, that I like to, and just, you know, add it to my game, because like I know numbers can be crazy, you know, like you go and get a science thing done and they're like, hey man, like these are low, you know, and you let that get to you, it could break you, you know, in the long term. That's why a lot of fighters don't do it. They're like, okay, I'm gonna do what's been working. But I feel like when you add a little science and a little bit of, you know, the dog you have, you know, that what brought you to this fight game, you could evolve to the scary thing.
Absolutely.
But it sounds like the thing that kind of got you started was being around great competition.
Yeah.
You know, from a very early age. Mm-hmm. Like you didn't have like a lot of practice. You just got thrown in like, hey, what are you doing this weekend kind of thing. So, you know, falling back on that, which got you to where you are now to take you to the next level. I mean, to me, it's the perfect evolution. So really quick before we go, I just have to ask, what's better, a knockout or a submission?
A submission. Yeah, I feel like when you make someone tap, you know, or even make them go to sleep, because like, man, like it's just pride. You can feel the pride, you know. That's why I've never been submitted in my career. I'm like, man, I'll not, or even put close to a submission where I felt kind of in danger. I'd trying so hard and not do that. But knockouts could happen like pretty fast, you know, in a match.
Yeah,
especially
you touch the button.
Like it hits your equilibrium. You know, your body can't even control itself, you know, or hit a body shot and you're like, wow, my liver, I feel that right now, you know, and
rest in peace, Bo Nickal.
Yeah, exactly. There you go,
my Bo Nickal bet.
Yeah. But yeah, I feel, a submission for sure.
All right, well, we'll be looking for a submission from your next fight. All right, guys, be sure not to go anywhere. We still have another segment where we talk about UFC 315. But in the break, be sure to reach out to Fisher Insurance Group for all your insurance needs. And we'll see you soon.